आँख से हमने देखी है बातिल की शिकस्त पाश हैं। अभी दयारे सर सैयद से आए हुए मेहमान को दयारे आज़ाद ने मुलाहजा फरमाया, हम सर आपके मशकूर ममनून हैं। अब मैं इंतहाई अदब व एहतराम के साथ अपने ईरान से आए हुए मेहमान मेहदी शाह रुखी साहब से इल्तमास करता हूँ कि वो आएँ और अपने इज़्ज़ती कलमात से नवाजें।
Padma Bushman, Shri Mumtaz Ali Said. Professor Sayyid Ainul Hassan, Professor Tariq Mansour, Janab Sayyid Salman Chishti, Professor E.J. Rao, Professor Shahid Nafiz Azmi, Professor Aziz Banu, Professor Gopal, dear participants, professors, scholars, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. A very good morning to all of you. Actually, being a diplomat is a tough job. Not because you're probably assuming or guessing right now, not necessarily or solely because of the complexity of bilateral and multilateral political and diplomatic relations in international arena, but due to the fact that the Qaunsil General of Iran in Hyderabad is expected to speak about the Majma al-Bahrain of Shikoh, the harbinger of pluralistic approach to religion and spirituality. This is the real tough job, especially in the Department of Persian and Asian Central Asian Studies of Maulana Azad University, amongst and in the presence of Indian and Iranian professors, scholars, and guests who are the real experts in the title. By accepting this invitation and giving speech in this issue, let me start from here. That in the course of the approaches under the same umbrella of unity, plurality, coalition orientation, strategic relations, policy focused on neighboring or regional countries, or any other naming despite the differences in their definitions, politicians and diplomats endeavor to discover commonalities and ultimately strengthen them, together with other nations in various political, security, economic and cultural fields. I don't need to mention that cultural ties or contexts have more durability, depth and objectivity than other contexts, as they connect intellectuals, elites and ordinary people together by their special very nature, because these are cultural elites who shape the way of thinking and lifestyle of people, at least their own people. One of the important elements that supports this research and inquiry in understanding commonalities is the history of cultural communication between nations, where rulers, scholars, writers and literatures, mystics, spirituals and religious leaders recognized diversities as an opportunity, not a threat, and thus corroborated, prepared ground for, and emphasized on. Therefore, whenever in history we trace a sign of an altruist, a pluralist, and culture-loving ruler in history, cultural works of structure, poetry and literature, and mystical prose, footprints and biographies. I wanted to mean past that, as an important symbol of elitism, have come to sight and view. With this rather long and hopefully not boring introduction, I tried to realize where Dara Shikoh and his works, especially Majma' al-Bahrain, stand. This importance is considerable independent of the comments, opinions, or probably criticism that researchers have made or may make about his methodology in Majma' al-Bahrain, especially about his comparison and the degree of his comparison to truth or reality. From my point of view, if Dara Shikoh wrote Majma' al-Bahrain in 1655 and passed away in 1659, almost 4 years later, and the war over Shah Jahan's succession unfolded in 1658, and Dara Shikoh was the eldest son and the immediate successor of his father, we may expect that he would have gone on the same way as his father and his great-great-grandfather, Aikal Shah, who was an art lover and nurturer with. And regardless of personal taste and behavior, he could have continued the tradition of his father's rule in tolerance between religious and schools of thought. On this take, and in the case of his coming to power, communications and cultural influences and impressions would have developed more than before. To the extent of my limited knowledge on the history of India and Persian literature and culture in India, I suppose that there are many points to be discussed, matched and admired about Dara Shikoh and his remaining works and footprints. But I'm smart enough to admit that everything shall be reminded and discussed by everyone. Therefore, I prefer to benefit from and take advantage of the speeches and points of researchers and participants while wishing the success for this seminar and remain hopeful for other cultural events to take place. I will take this opportunity for announcing the readiness of my office and staff in Hyderabad for cooperation with friends, researchers, and government administrators, and participation as well as material and mental support to the extent of my authority. I will end by stating the fact that Iran's foreign policy has been shaped based on comprehensive development of relations with government and people of India. Iran and India belong to a cultural tradition based on spirituality, rituals, and peaceful life of religions and sects. Let's do our best to recreate the history in which we had cultural and human interactions for the best of our people. Let me once again thank Professor Rainal Hassan and congratulate him and his colleagues, especially Department of Persian and Central Asian Studies, Professor Aziz Banu and Professor Azmi. Thank you very much.
हम इंतहाई अदब और एहतराम के साथ